move to a fireside chat on a CEO's perspective on global challenges. For this, we're welcoming Fabian Rupprecht, CEO of Helvetia Baloise Group, and Thea Jensen, Director General of Insurance Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Sit here.
Oops.
Awesome.
We start with the dance of the chairs. So good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all in Brussels, second year in a row. Let's not repeat that one, because we really are very keen that this conference reaches all of our European audiences also by being present in the local markets physically for the conference. Fabian, thank you so much for joining me here on stage. We had a little bit of a chat yesterday, and we're going to try and see if I can come up with some provocative questions around global uncertainty and still keep my job. So without further ado, Fabian, you have just recently led the merger of Helvetia and Baloise Group, an important merger in the European insurance scene. I'm keen to see what kind of strategic vision has guided you in that perspective, and also leading through a transformation like that is never a linear, predictable exercise. What kind of leadership challenges have you faced in that, and how has that shaped how you see your role as CEO and the function that you serve internally and externally?
Yeah, thank you for that question.
We start with an easy one, right?
Yeah, so I think it's the biggest insurance merger Switzerland ever has had. But it's not something that wins the prize of originality, because these two companies have existed one next to each other for more than 160 years. And over the last 30 years at least, and my Swiss colleagues can confirm that, there has been always rumors that these two companies come together. The fact that it came to a merger was using the right moment and the right momentum, and that made it possible. And there was a strong belief on both sides that each company by itself, it's 2 billion companies in terms of premiums and market cap, are or were too small to really capture the benefits, because size matters. Size matters because of regulatory costs, because of innovation, because of investments you need to do. And that made us believe that coming together would be the best thing to do. I think we have a unique chance because we have the closeness to our customers of each company, and the size allows us to increase in excellence by really working together and investing. In terms of leadership challenges, so the context, it's a merger of equals. That sounds great. And it's actually great because there's no investor who has to pay a premium for the acquisition of the other one. But it has its pitfalls, and that was very much the leadership challenge. The first one is that when you do a merger of equals, there's always a tendency to compromise, to bring things together. And there's a big risk in that. The first is speed. Because, by looking at everything, you might just lose time. So one of the leadership challenges was to make sure that we go fast. So I invented the 70-30 rule, which I cannot say in front of any regulator here. Fortunately, there's none here. Where I said, look, speed goes over quality in the decision, because you can go fast in some decisions, and then you can correct afterwards, where if you wait until you have the perfect information, it might just be too late and it's worse for the company. The second challenge was that we didn't want just to be a compromise between two legacies. We wanted to use it to reset. So making people think not of let's just take the middle point between the two companies, but what's better for the new one? And what's the best for a new company? That was the point. And when you look at our brand, the logical brand would have been Helvetia Baloise. We decided for brand Helvetia, and we used the look and feel of Baloise, which is much shorter and much better in the way we did it. And last, The challenge is that you believe in such a merger about the best of two worlds. It's always, it's the best of two worlds. But if you try to combine your IT landscape using the best of two worlds, you end up in a potpourri of things. And then you get your challenge on the interfaces. Because, two systems then don't work well together. The best thing is if you try to connect your iPhone to your PC, you see how much difficulties that can have, and that even your IT specialists don't know how to solve it. So you need to make sure that you take bold decisions. So we decided, for example, in the German market, we would go only for the Baloise environment, and in the Swiss market, oops, I'm losing that, too long. In the Swiss market, we decided to only use the Helvetia environment. So last point, what does it mean for my role? There's so many decisions you have to take in such a short time frame that's impossible to think that as a CEO you can decide everything and you can control everything. So your role as a CEO becomes to set the guidelines, to set the directions, and to orchestrate. But your teams need to be empowered to take the decision themselves. And that is very obvious in such a transition phase where so many decisions to be taken that just any other way of leadership would not be possible. And I think it's a good learning.
So a good learning from what sounds like it was a meant-to-be thing, but not a simple thing. Looking at the environment that you're now finding yourself in, we're talking about uncertainty, global uncertainty here today. Do you see that there is a need for, I'm not going to talk about your specific business model, but the insurer business model to be transformed in the light of all these uncertain risks that Frédéric talked about, disruption from technology. We heard John, I don't think you were that depressive, by the way. We heard John outline a lot of things that we need to take into consideration. Are we looking at a pivotal point where risk management approaches needs to be rethought?
Yeah, I think that the basic principle of insurance is more relevant than ever in the world we face now. And each factor by itself really is not something that worries me, because we always had conflict. There was always geopolitical tensions. There was always volatility in capital markets. The combination can increase the volatility to a level where you have, to invest more into your risk management and more in not only scenario analysis, but real plans of how to deal with it. So that part, I think the model works and we are there, even though, of course, you need to face reality. I think the most transformative part over the last 2 to 3 years has been AI. And I think that does not come to a surprise. And AI will so fundamentally change the way we work, the way we interact with customers, that it's very hard to predict exactly what impact that will have on the model. And I'm always very careful if people tell me that they know what AI will exactly bring, because I think that exactly you don't know. So you have to react, you have to go with it. And I think that there can be a big part of transformation coming.
So if we look 5 years ago, we probably wouldn't have said AI had we sat on this stage. What if we look 5 years ahead? What's the one thing that we're probably missing when it comes to things that might disrupt and transform in addition to AI?
I think, so there are things like quantum computing, there might be other things coming. I don't think that we should spend a lot of time with predicting. Mm-hmm. I think we're very good in Europe in predicting and thinking about what could come in the future. When we look at other cultures, we see that they just act, they just do. And I think I'm more for a call of action. Let's face what is there today let's try to adapt, let's try to adjust, to use it as an opportunity and not too much think about, what could be there. I think the world has fundamentally changed. The rhythm at which things change just require to act and to experience and to adjust and to correct and to build that muscle instead of building the muscle of long-term predictions.
So resilience
It's provocative, but that's my view.
So resilience it's about adaptability, it's about bolder decisions. In a city that takes 2-3 years to go from idea to legislation on a good day, what would be your advice to policymakers who are here in the room or listening in when it comes to bolder decisions on realizing some of those potentials that are in these reports that took quite a long time? We had a look back on the Draghi report a year after, less than 10% was implemented. Can we afford to get it wrong, but correct also at the political level?
Yeah. I think that when we speak about regulation, so first of all, I think regulation is good and it is important. And in our industry, it's even more important because our industry is about trust. And regulation helps to make sure that we do the right things and that we can be trusted in the long term. It's a very, very important ingredient in our business model. But then when we think about regulation, we have always to think as well that in Europe we are not an island completely isolated from the rest of the world. So we have always to understand that we are part of a global scheme and a global network. And so whatever we do needs to be competitive compared to other continents, compared to other big markets. As well, when we think about regulation, we cannot think about insurance regulation by itself. Because if there is banking regulation, customers can switch. There can be arbitrage. So for me, it is important that when we think about regulation, we think in the larger picture. And I think speed is important to give clarity. Because unclarity stops everything. So that's, again, my learning from the merger. It's more important to create clarity than to be perfect in everything. Because in the time of unclarity, nothing happens. And that I think is a big risk.
So there's a win for innovation and evolution. Looking at we looked a lot at Solvency II. We've talked about simplification. So the advice is just go for it?
I think speed is important. Yeah.
So if there's any policymakers in the room, that's a very clear call. We need to go for it. What about the role of the insurance when it comes to playing a role for societal resilience? We've heard something about climate adaptations, but also aging populations, risks that we know are fundamental to our societal. Where do you see some of the things where we as an industry can contribute further?
Yeah. I think making or offering insurance just under market conditions is, from my point of view, the best incentive to create resilience in markets, because insurance itself creates incentives. If you have a theft insurance, automatically you have the incentive to protect your home. If you have a flood insurance, insurer will make sure that you have an incentive to protect you against floods. If you do health insurance, insurers give you the incentive to live healthy. If you do retirement savings, it's about making sure that you have enough savings in the future. So my plaidoyer here is let insurance do their work. Let's make sure that we have the best chance to really penetrate the market and to be as attractive as possible for a large part of population. Now, at the same time, as there are many insurers in the room, that only works if we take as well our responsibility. There is responsibility we have to take, and I think it is important that we don't have only a short-term view of profit maximization here and there, but that we have the long-term view. Because if we have that, and if we make sure that we can ensure society as a whole, if we can make sure that we really create that value I was talking about, we will as well get the trust and the buy-in of many political parties around what we do. So I think that combination, and that's really an appeal to everyone. Let's make sure that on one side we fight for the basic idea of insurance, because I still think it is the absolute best one to create the resilience, but at the same time, let's make sure we take our responsibility as insurers.
So turning to another responsibility as insurers and looking at some of the things we're going to be talking about later today, the young people that are looking to be part of the future of, well, they're looking for their futures. We're hoping to see how we get them to be part of our future. Is there something that you would say we can do as an insurance industry to take the responsibility of making a career in our sector something that is exciting for them, so that we continue to be able to provide that resilience as an industry with strong, new, young minds that come up with new ideas?
Yeah, I think so. Not sure. So your question, on one side it's about customers, on the other side it's about talents.
Yeah.
I think typically insurers look at a very young target group when it's about getting the first experience in insurance. And I think we're good there. I think where we are less good is when it becomes to the more seniors. We often take it as granted that somebody is our customer over time, and then when people become 50 and plus, their needs might change, and we need to make sure that we adapt our product offer as well to the needs of the elderly population, which is becoming bigger and bigger in Europe. So if I look at our portfolio, we have more than 50% of our customers already above 50. But going back to the young talents, I think that the insurance industry is highly attractive for young people. We just need to market it in the right way. Insurance is a business where you can do business and at the same time help and support people at so critical moments of their lives when it really matters for them. This is the base of our business. Tell me how many industries are there with a very similar purpose? Very few. So if you really want to get young people, make sure that you transmit that purpose, because that purpose is fantastic. And that is always what fascinated me in the insurance industry, that I can combine business with exactly serving the society in that way. And I think, we're not yet good enough in transmitting that, not only to young people, but in general to society. What we do, what we can help. If there's a natural catastrophe, newspapers are full of the subsidy a state gives. It's often a fraction of what insurers pay in that moment. And nobody speaks about that, And there are so many, so many cases where I think this is part of our business. And now it's very exciting. You have that mission, you have that purpose. You have new technology that allows you to do so many things better and differently in the future. And just AI has so much relevance for what we do, that I think, that combination of everything, let's go for it. So there is no question that if we market it right, it's a super attractive industry for young people, but for everyone.
So we should be proud of our industry, our products, but also what we can offer for society as a whole. Why do you think we are not necessarily the best at, quote unquote, bragging about what we can do? Is it because we like to be able to be the steady partner for everybody, or is it because we forget that we're actually that important on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think sometimes you forget what we do.
Okay.
to be critical, and I think we have always to think about it. We have a very, it's a very abstract product. If you buy your iPad, your iPhone, whatever, you can open it, you can play with it right away, and insurance is something that is abstract, that is something not tangible for the future. And I think there's a lot has to do with that it's very hard to describe what we have and what we do. And then I think, typically what we do is related to emotional things, and that helps. But I think it is demanding to do that. But we should not stop doing it. We should do it more. And I think in that uncertain world, as I said before, and I will say probably at the end as well, the relevance is there. We have so many examples where we can play a crucial role.
So trying to maybe balance out some of these uncertainties and risks and maybe some of the doom and gloom of some of the things that we need to, that's core of our business. If you look to the future of insurance, what gives you optimism, maybe despite or because of some of these challenges that we're facing as an industry and as a business that's been around for centuries? What is the future optimism that you're taking away from the current situation, and maybe also from your learnings from the merger?
Yeah. So let me speak first about relevance. Why do I believe that this relevance is increasing? We spoke about the uncertainty. I think that is very clear. We have to think about demographics, and we have to think about, that there's more and more fortune that needs to be protected in the future, and as well in health is appreciated more and more, and people want to protect their health, they want to protect their retirement. All that is a trend there. Now on the other side, because of demographic challenges, but as well just because of budget issues, the role of the state has to reduce over time. What, in particular in Europe, we had in many states, that's impossible. If you just do the math, it is impossible to maintain that. So somebody needs to jump in, and that are insurers. And then, as well, society evolves. The family, protecting every family member in the past and being kind of the social insurance, that model changes. And we have so many single households, single people, and coming into age now. Insurance could be the partner of those people in difficult times, much more than it has been today, and going to service and not only to insurance itself. So, when you just put that together, the relevance we will have in the future, it's not only about demographics and not only about uncertainty, it's about the fact that there's so many fundamental changes that we have to play that role. And I think if you combine that with the opportunities we have through technology going forward, the way we can simplify our offer, the way we can communicate, the way we can create convenience, but as well the way we can explain, because it's this difficult product to explain. Technology will help us there, so if we use it. And last, we can become cheaper. We can reduce our operating costs significantly, which is one of the hurdles often in markets where we live. So if you combine that, look, it's very simple. There's so much to gain and to win. I can't be more optimistic than that.
I'm going to close on this because this is the perfect way to end this conversation. Fabian, thank you very much for instilling optimism in all of us. And thank you very much for sharing your 70-30. I think we're going to try and look into if that's something we can do in Insurance Europe, making bold decisions and making sure we adjust them along the line. Everybody, please join me in thanking Fabian for his reflections.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.